It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it's great to have you in studio today. We're going to sit down with the Prescott National Forest, Pete Gordon in studio, Fire Staff Officer. Welcome back.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
We're just going to get an update on the wildfire season. First of all, we want to go backtrack a little bit and find out how winter was. I think everybody had a really great winter. I've got you here today, and then I got Coconino National Forest coming in on Thursday. So kind of a forest week this week on Countywide to just kind of get up to speed on how things are going. I'm really surprised to find out how up north how fast all the snow is melting. So how did the Prescott National Forest do over the winter months?
Fantastic. It was one of the wettest winters on record. The exact numbers escape me, but I want to say the precip from October 1 through just about a week or two ago into mid-March was, I think, 1 1/3 times the normal amount of precip. So we've got a third more or a half more moisture than we ordinarily would get. We also benefited from that great snowstorm there in what was that, was that February?
Prescott received more snow this year than I think I've ever seen in all the years I've been doing this last winter here.
Yeah, a lot of locals, I consider myself local. I grew up in Arizona, but I didn't live in Prescott in the 90s, but a lot of folks who did have been referencing not seeing this kind of snow since the mid-90s. And I recall specifically when I lived in Flagstaff in 93, a very wet winter. And so this, I would say, akin to that year, very wet. And the forest, no doubt, has benefited from that. I'd say across the state, but certainly our central highlands and I think the rim country benefited greatly from that with snowpack and repeated moisture. That's what we needed, is this repeated storm after storm from October to February has been fantastic.
Yeah, February was an amazing month. And March actually turned out pretty good too. March hasn't been too bad. Here we are wrapping up March. It's like the first official week of spring. But yeah, here we are with our first actual, it's been so long since I've done the weather for a week where the forecast fit on a piece of paper, just a couple inches high, where most days it fills up the whole page because you've got this percentages each day, we got winds, we got snow levels, how much snow is going to fall, and then Weather Service in Belmont there, they've just been great because we've had to have them on just about every single day because we've had 2-3 storms in a week. It's just phenomenal. So I haven't seen a winter like this in a long, long time. I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, agree with that.
Yeah, and long overdue. I mean, you and I have spent a lot of years months and years talking about whether this fire season is going to be as bad as last, and it's kind of nice to, our conversation of the rest of the show, I'm sure, it's not going to be quite that ominous as it has been in past years.
Last year when you were here, wow,
we were talking restrictions this time last year.
Yeah, we had you in, I think, in February last year, and back in again in March and April. You were on as much as the Weather Service is on during the winter months right now. So it was just constant, and it was a lot of the sparks, the dragging chains. I remember last year was the first year of the Ready, Set, Go. And that's, I didn't realize that, but that's mostly through law enforcement, not so much through the Forest Service, isn't it?
Yeah, the Ready, Set, Go is a campaign really pushed by, I'd say, for us, locally, Yavapai County.
YCSO.
But it just melds very well with whether we're talking one less spark, only you, all of our campaign messages to try to prevent an ignition. YCSO's message of Ready, Set, Go just dovetails nicely, and okay, we do as much as we can to prevent it. As we well know, we can't prevent them all. And when they do occur, there's some responsibility to be ready for an emergency. And fire being that emergency is get your affairs in order long before season starts. Have a plan and know where you're going to go, and don't hesitate. Don't wait to be told to leave your house because of a pending wildfire or impinging wildfire.
Yeah, I mean, Ready, Set, Go is all about that. It's about, first of all, get ready just in case it does happen. And we've seen it happen. And sometimes last year, I want to say the fire that I noticed that really the Ready, Set, Go message was almost, you almost couldn't be Ready, Set, Go. But over in Prescott Valley, when they had that grass fire light up along the highway.
Yep, viewpoint fire.
Yeah, the viewpoint fire. And that fire went from being a spark to hundreds of acres and burning homes.
Thousands of acres.
Within just a matter of that. And I remember we were trying to put stories together for that fire. And I thought, by the time I get Rick Chase from Central Arizona Fire on, it's going to be, that fire is going to have already consumed hundreds more acres with as fast as the winds were blowing last year. And that's the season we're coming into now. Spring is coming. So let me ask you this. With Prescott National Forest, we've got a lot more rain, we got a lot more snow, things are wet, the big fuels, the down logs. Are those the 100 fuels? 100
the 1,000 hour.
Those are the 1,000-hour fuels,
okay.
I always think they're the 100, but they're not. The larger logs and stuff are, but the big trees, those are 1,000. Okay. So we've got those pretty good and soaked and stuff like that, but we're coming into the spring wind season. So what does that mean to you when this time of year arrives?
That means a lot of things to me. Number one, it's to be expected. So we were just talking about anticipating for our citizens to be ready for fire season. So for me, it means, hey, this is typical spring winds as the jet stream moves and we get these weather patterns. So that's fairly normal, and we could very well see more wind events between now and the end of May. The second thing it means to me is it is going to dry the forest out, and the vegetation will dry out. And then the third thing, as we're talking about with the viewpoint and as you're asking about, is the wind-driven fires in the grass or the fine fuels is almost always a concern. The grasses, the dried, dead grasses that are standing across many places in Arizona, they only take a day, sometimes just a matter of hours, to really dry out. You may recall, I want to say it was Martin Luther King holiday, middle of this last January, the middle of a fairly wet winter. We had a couple 100-acre fire not far from the viewpoint. Central Arizona Fire responded with some of our other partners in Prescott to a fairly significant grass fire in the middle of January, in the middle of a wet winter. So to me, there's a readiness for all of us in the business of any day could be a fire day depending on the fuel that it burns in. And so I think our public should be aware of that while we might be able to relax a little bit on the length or the intensity of a season this year with all the moisture over the winter, doesn't mean there won't be any season, and it doesn't mean that we can't have bad fires in the wrong place.
I guess, have we seen any real wildfires so far this year? Because typically we always watch the southern part of the state, Coronado National Forest. I know Coronado National Forest right now is doing a lot of prescribed burning and stuff like that. But you typically see it in the southern part of the state, and then it slowly but surely makes its way up. And by May into June is when we start to see our wildfire season really kick in.
I think you've painted a really accurate picture, and that will fit this year. I think it all depends on whether there is an ignition source and where it is. But the conditions are such that what you described, kind of moving over the next few weeks, moving into southern Arizona, that's going to be probably the first place where the grasses that are greening up now will start to cure by the end of April, early May. And what you get as we move up in elevation and these more northern latitudes, the season will progress this direction. So I think that's lining up to be a possibility this year. But the good news again is, at the very least, I'd say the longevity of the season has been shortened by the amount of precip we've had. And depending on where, I love more of our pine fuels, muggy on rim country. The Coconino can probably speak better when you talk to them this week, but I think our rim country is probably in the best shape for a lesser season just because of snowpack. We haven't had that in years. So the soil's going to absorb and hang on to that moisture for a lot longer than we've seen in the last 2 decades.
I'd agree with that. I think eastern Arizona is going to fare a little bit better this year, too. We've got to take our first break. Prescott National Forest Fire Staff Officer Pete Gordon in studio today. This is County-Wide. Stick around. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Do you feel like people are avoiding you? Don't be a dreaded spreader. Protect yourself and those around you from flu. Here's 3 things you should do. Get a flu vaccine each year. Take everyday preventive actions to stop the spread of germs, like covering coughs and sneezes and washing your hands, and stay home if you're sick. If you do get the flu, contact a healthcare professional right away and take flu antivirals if prescribed. Don't be a dreaded spreader. Take 3 steps to fight flu.
Most of us want to make some type of difference in the lives of others. St. Jude does miraculous work.
The fact that no one has to pay, it's a place where everyone is treated as an equal.
Everybody is welcome here, and it doesn't matter, your religion or, what part of the world you're from, that just sort of all that is taken away. It just gives you some hope.
Yo siento que soy parte de esa bendición que ese niño recibió al irse a su casa ya sanado.
It's just a nice feeling to put your energy into something that really does genuinely make a difference in a child's life.
There's just no greater gift. If we have the ability to help, then we have a responsibility to help.
Mandalay Homes introduces the new Ion Series, a revolutionary new approach to home building innovation and energy management. Built on a foundation of industry-leading energy efficiency and sustainable building practices, the Ion Series home redefines how we use and manage renewable energy. Contact a Mandalay Home sales executive today to learn more, or visit one of our Ion Series communities throughout northern Arizona.
Welcome back to Countywide. Pete Gordon from the Prescott National Forest is in studio today. We're just talking about the approaching wildfire season. It's been pushed back. It's not starting in February like it did last year. It's not going to maybe start in March like it did this year, because we're almost done with March. But April, May, and June, we're going to start seeing those things come across. During the winter months, was Prescott National Forest, even with the government shutdown, were you able to get out there and get what you wanted done in preparation for the spring?
So I would say during the shutdown, no. I mean, technically we were shut down. There was some, what we call essential or accepted work going on. We had all of the fire and law enforcement and fire were in what we call this accepted category, kind of on call. But really there was no work being done as far as projects completed. Some maintenance and care for some of the rec facilities that remained open. We had a skeleton crew of folks doing some of the recreation work, but nothing in the way of fuels management, fuels mitigation. But the honest answer is that really, for us anyway, was not really much of an impact. Our fire season readiness really doesn't ramp up until about the end of February. When we bring folks on early into the winter months, it's usually to do fuels work, and we weren't scheduled to bring on our early firefighters for that fuels work until February. So there really wasn't much time lost there. I suppose we probably lost a few good snowstorms worth of pile burning, but we've had such a robust winter. We've done really well with pile burning before and after the shutdown. So we've made a great dent in our pile burning regardless of the shutdown, and really has had no impact on our getting ready for fire season, because that's what we're doing now in the last 4 weeks or so, and that's what
How do you do that? How do you prepare for that?
For the shutdown or for getting fire season ready?
For getting ready for the fire season. I mean, what does your job entail right now? Because it is around the corner here.
So for me, well, my job entails obviously a lot of things as a staff officer, busy with program of work and other forest business with budget. But where I focus maybe my attention right now on readiness is we're in the hiring process, both permanent and seasonal hires, temp hires, to bring our fire crews on in the coming weeks. So most of my staff does a lot of that work, but I get involved there and maybe doing some of the troubleshooting with our regional office. We've got training ongoing in the last few weeks, academy, and then we do a lot of our own local training, and that will continue for another few weeks. And then the rest of the readiness that involves me anyway will be a lot of our preparedness reviews. So when the hotshot crew comes on here in a few weeks, we'll do a readiness inspection, and we do that every year. We visit with the firefighters. We go through a checklist, and from physically checking equipment to just having discussions on where we are mentally and are we ready with our physical tests. And we end up doing that with all of our resources, but the hotshot crew is generally one of the first.
Okay. All right, so gearing up.
Yeah.
Gearing up. So what kind of wildfire season do you think we're going to have this year? In your crystal ball?
My crystal ball.
Pete Gordon, who's done it so many years.
I don't know if I can get away with it like a weather forecast, where sometimes you get it wrong and it's okay. But I'll give my best. I would say, generally speaking, as I've already alluded to, I think we're going to see a shorter fire season, assuming monsoons set in around the usual time.
4th of July usually.
Let's hope mid-July. If that's the given, I think we're certainly starting this key fire season availability of the fuels. The key fire season factors are going to be delayed. I also think the amount of moisture we've had, and should we see more, which I hope we do in the next few weeks, if we see more moisture, I think we're going to see a pretty robust green up. We already know the wildflower season is booming in southern Arizona.
Right.
The grasses are green the minute you turn south of Cordes Junction.
Sure.
That's going to continue. A little more rain will just make that even more robust. So I think the green up might be prolonged, and when those grasses ordinarily would cure out might be just a little later. The other thing, this is much speculation, but and maybe more hope than speculation, but I'm wondering if the amount of moisture we've had might actually prolong the typical chaparral green up, which we see in May, very short-lived. I wonder, especially if we get more precip, might set in early and maybe last a little longer, which just means the fuels are available a little shorter. A little shorter time period.
Right.
So that's my forecast. Is there still is the potential for a fire season, but I think a little shorter. And as I said earlier, I think our pine country, rim country, where we've had snowpack, feet of snow for months, that's going to see probably less fire behavior, or a little dampened, if you will, compared to the last 2 decades.
We still can't just sit back, though, and relax, though. I mean, it's, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show there, in January, they had a wildfire right there in Prescott Valley alongside the highway, and it was either somebody flicked a cigarette out the window, or somebody was dragging some chains or a chunk of metal or something like that, but something got spit into that grass and it started the grass on fire. Right in the middle of January. I thought it was really weird because it was snowing in Flagstaff that day, and it was burning in Prescott Valley. So that just shows you the diversity of the range we have here.
Yeah, the climate that would allow fire can be a matter of a few miles apart, or it could be hundreds or thousands of miles apart. But yeah, it's just a very dynamic environment, and obviously a lot of it depends on weather. And we know, especially in Arizona, from just an hour's drive, you can see all sorts of different weather. So to your point, though, our citizens and those of us that respond to wildfires, we should never let our guard down. It might maybe catch our breath a little bit on a season like this that I just gave a little prediction on. Maybe catches our breath, but certainly we can't let our guard down, and I wouldn't want to see our citizens think that we're out of the woods, so to say, pun intended. You talked about chains, and everything still applies, all of our messaging and all the behaviors we hope folks think about in making sure we're not dragging chains when we're towing stuff. When we go out, I hope folks are going to get busy mowing lawns and trimming back brush and trimming trees. But think about that. If it's a windy, dry day and it's been a few days of warm weather ahead of that, be careful grinding and mowing stuff. You don't want to cause a spark. Same fixing our fences, things like that. Everything still applies. As much concern as there was last year, I would say we need to apply the same concern to starting a wildfire, even though the intensity may be different this year.
Yeah, okay. Let's take our second break. Prescott National Forest Fire Staff Officer Pete Gordon in studio today. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
What does it look like when a life is truly changed?
I feel a sense of accomplishment because I built a house. This house has brought us financial independence.
It's a great place to raise a family.
Strength, fuerza. When I look back where we've come from to where we are today, it makes my heart very happy.
Potential. Potencia.
For me, this house means all of us together.
Sorry. Together.
Security.
Security.
Every family dreams to have their own house. This house changed our lives.
Habitat for Humanity is at work in your community and around the world. Through shelter, we empower.
We develop quality citizens who keep our core, our country,
and our communities side by side on the winning side. Not for glory, but for honor. For a code that isn't written or spoken, but lived. It's what we do. It's who we are. It's the battle cry of our fighting spirit. Battles won. See all the battles Marines fight to win at marines.com.
Welcome back to Countywide. Prescott National Forest, Pete Gordon in studio today talking about the approaching wildfire season. It's never with Arizona whether it's going to happen or not. It will happen.
Sure.
We just don't know when. But thank God for the good, nice, wet winter.
Yep.
And we'll see if maybe spring is a wet one too. Weather Service was in here and they said they see it both ways.
Yep.
The El Nino could either make our wet weather continue or it could slow it down. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
Drones have been a thing over the last couple of years.
Sure.
And we do the stories about don't fly your drones into a wildfire zone, especially if there's a wildfire going on, because there is a, what is that?
Temporary flight restriction.
Temporary flight restriction,
Yep.
So you're not supposed to be able to fly in there. So is the Forest Service using drones for anything right now to kind of monitor fires and get an idea?
We are. We're not currently doing anything locally. We met a little bit over the winter, and we're fortunate enough we host a couple of employees, Forest Service employees. They're not specifically Prescott employees, but we host them, and they're involved in our aircraft program. One particularly is one of our first Forest Service drone pilots. And so we have the technology and the resources right here, and so we've been talking about opportunities to use it. But the Forest Service and some of our other federal partners for the last several years have been utilizing here and there as we learn the capabilities, the appropriate size and type. It's not certainly my area of expertise, but from what I understand, we're kind of feeling our way into it, and they're starting to be utilized for all sorts of natural resource monitoring, but fire as well.
I was going to say,
and there's a big future coming.
A big resource, right?
Yep.
I mean, to be able
Yep.
to fly something out there that doesn't have
Sure.
a human being in it. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so the drone goes
Yep.
down and burns up, no big deal. No one was in that,
Yep.
but
Yep.
yeah, the sky views. You've got to really be able to watch how things are
Sure.
taking place out there.
Yep.
It would be pretty interesting to see.
Yep, and I know there are avenues for a few of our folks to have these licenses and make use of the drones, but I have no doubt it will be short order till we're probably fully engaged with a UAS or a drone program.
Minute and a half. I'm out there with my drone. I'm right next to your wildfire that you're out there fighting, Pete, and I fly my drone in there because I want to get some beautiful pictures and video of this fire happening.
Yeah.
What happens when I do something like that?
Well, you could, at the least, you could find yourself in trouble, arrested, and in violation of FAA rules because of this flight restriction. At the worst, your drone could cause an accident. And somewhere in between, what I think a lot of folks don't realize, hopefully the message is out over the last couple of years, you can't fly drones in and around a wildfire. Just don't do it. But what I wonder is if folks really realize what the impacts are. It has happened, I'd say, a dozen times a summer over the last few summers across the country. We have to shut down the air operation once we detect that drone. We can't afford to take the chance of a helicopter full of firefighters being struck by a drone, an air tanker pilot with retardant striking a drone and having an aircraft accident. It shuts down the operation, and that operation could very well be really critical to either saving or reducing the risk to our firefighters who are on the ground below that aircraft or protecting a community. So don't do it. Appreciate the curiosity, but it's just not worth it. Again, the least is you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. The worst case is you're going to cause somebody a lot of harm, if not kill somebody by being in the way.
The thought of firefighters on the ground saying, hey, wow, we need some help right now, and here comes the retardant or the bucket of water. All of a sudden there's a drone, this person's got to pull away. You've got all these firefighters down on the ground now in danger. So think about that. I mean, that's definitely a possibility.
Yep.
Definitely a possibility.
For sure.
Okay, and then we've got like 30 seconds left, but we've got lightning fires, so when monsoon season hits, maybe we can talk some more about it then. When monsoon hits,
sure,
the lightning strike fires and how you guys manage those fires.
I'd be happy to come back and discuss that.
All right, Pete Gordon, all right. Hey. Well, let's hope we have last year actually turned into a better year than we thought it was going to be for a wildfire season. We didn't have any too really big wildfires, so that's good. So Prescott National Forest Fire Staff Officer Pete Gordon, that's today's Countywide. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.